On this batch, which batch is this? 621. On this batch, I'm going to do something that I don't know if I've done in a very long time, and certainly not for one of the videos. I'm going to take them out and check them an hour and a half or 2 hours early. Usually it takes extra time, and we'll go into a little bit of the why in just a minute. So I'm going to bypass the rest of the time. It's got more than an hour and a half. It says the pressure down at 67. I do not believe that mine is calibrated correctly, because mine's gone negative before, and that's impossible. All of the tray temperatures are about 120 or higher, even the top and bottom one this time. So we'll open the drain valve, and we'll get these out and check them. And that is a very toasty tray. 793. Now we'll get these back up there, and take tray 1 and put it down 1 spot. And then tray 3. Again, a very toasty tray. It's almost 130. And then tray 4. And this one is cooler, but it's still very warm. It's just under 120. Okay, I'm going to set those down here for a minute. So one of the viewers mentioned on the video just came out a day or so ago. Anyway, it was cooked chicken, and I had the slabs stacked up. And they said, wouldn't it make sense to rotate them, to adjust them so that the bottom ones and they get stirred up and give them a better chance to be exposed to the heat. And absolutely that's true, and I had a really good reason for not doing it. I'm lazy. So ideally, because I am stacking it so high, the middle area is going to freeze dry the slowest. So it would make sense, I'd leave these in the same orientation, but take the bottom ones and put them on top. But they're absolutely right, and here's a good example. There's a little bit of ice in the middle layer. And that makes absolute sense that you would have this. So now I can put that on the top. So it makes absolute sense that that would happen. And we'll discuss that in just a minute. So by taking these, the coldest area is right here between the 2 layers. So if I just switch them, now the part that's the least dry is touching the pan and straight up. These other ones are so thin it's probably not a real big deal. All of them could benefit from that same rotation. So I know that these are not going to be finished yet because of that right there. And there could be more inside here too. Let's get these back into the freeze dryer and discuss the issue with these. All right, so I've got the weights on them right there, but I know positively that tray 3 will not be done. It's not done right now, which means that in 2 hours it's going to have lost weight, and it's going to have to go back in for additional time because I won't know that it's dry. Let's get this restarted and then discuss it just a little bit. I don't have a whiteboard down here, otherwise I'd draw pictures. So this batch has been running for about 26.5 hours. And it would have been done if I had spread the meats and stuff out evenly on the trays. I didn't do a good job of that, so it's going to take longer. I want to mention a little bit about why it takes longer than you think it might, or than you think it should. I'm loading pretty much every batch with 10 pounds. This batch is a little lighter. It's quite a bit lighter. So sometimes I do up to 11 or 12 pounds, but usually I do 8 to 10 pounds, and I try to go for 10 pounds. 10 pounds is a good water load for the medium machine. However, to fit 10 pounds on the tray, you have to do something that you'll find in the manual says don't do that. You have to stack the food more than 1 layer deep. Think of peas. I'm stacking it 2.5 pounds on a tray. I'm probably getting 4 peas tall, maybe even 5 peas tall. The ones in the middle are going to dry slower. You have 3 kinds of heat transfer. You have conduction, convection, and radiation, or radiant. Once you vacuum the freeze dryer out, the vacuum comes on, the convection is gone because there's no air to move that heat around. So now you're stuck with, or left with, conduction and radiant. Well, the radiant is coming down from the heater above the tray, and it's also coming up through the tray. The tray itself gets warm and then radiates some heat up, and then the tray also, the food is in contact with it, so then you have the conduction. So it's touching, the heat can transfer directly up through it. But think of insulation. If you have light, fluffy insulation, it's preventing the heat from traveling through. With this, it's a similar thing. Like the shredded cabbage, I have a thin layer of shredded cabbage because I only put 1 pound on each tray. Usually I would do 2.5 pounds and just pile it high, which means you would have a layer in here that has no direct radiation or radiant heat hitting it, because it's being hidden by all the stuff up here. You have no direct conduction from underneath or radiant from underneath because it's being stopped by the other pieces. And then as they dry out, you actually start to lose the conduction through the material because now it's dry and it doesn't have that mass to help transmit the heat through. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a food scientist, I'm not like the little puppy torturing megalomaniac that caused all kinds of problems here for the last 3 years. I'm not the science, I don't claim to be the science, and neither is that person. Science is a process, it's not a thing and it's not a person. Anyway, by putting as much as I do on the tray over and over, I am making a slower process. Like if I'd just done 4 pounds of shredded cabbage, 1 pound on each tray, it would have been done in probably less than 24 hours. But because I have those thick slabs of meat that were piled really high, some of them are 5 layers deep, well, that really slows down the process. But I don't mind, because if I put 10 pounds in there versus 2.5 pounds, the 2.5 pounds is going to freeze dry much faster. But is it going to be 4 times as fast? Because I can do this batch in 2 days. Can I do the other batch in just a half day? Probably not. It's probably going to take me a whole day. So I might be able to do a batch in 24 hours. And I may not even have to defrost because the ice amount would be low. So maybe I could get 2 of them in 2 days. But I can't get the whole 10 pounds. So I do it this way, I really load it up, and I recognize that it's going to take longer. Now, the second part of the problem is, it lies to the machine. The machine is using an algorithm, and I'm guessing on part of this because I didn't program it, I don't have the program, but I see how it works, so I can extrapolate or figure out how it's working because of that. So it's using the fact that you're lowering the pressure to a certain amount, you're heating up the material, that sublimates the ice out of there and turns it to a vapor, which raises the pressure, and so then it has sensors to know what the temperature and the pressure is. At some point it's pumping full amounts of heat into it, but it can't raise the pressure, so it must be done. But not if I've lied to it by stuffing a tray this deep with it, and the middle layer, and actually it's about 2/3 of the way down is the coldest spot, not in the middle. That middle layer is insulated so much from the heat, it's taking a ridiculously long time to finish. And that's where stirring them up partway through or rearranging them, as the one viewer suggested I should have, and the viewer's absolutely right. I should have rearranged them. And to rearrange them, I'm best to go take that bottom layer and simply move it to the top to leave them in the same orientation, because the cold layer is going to be on the bottom of the top part and the top of the bottom part. So if I switch them, now this layer is touching the tray and this one is exposed to the heater above. So that's probably my best bet when I do that. I just give it more time instead because I'm essentially lazy. And as you saw, I forget which way, I would have to do it more methodical. Maybe if I had, oh, that's not a bad idea, I could have a second tray and then take the top layer off, put it down, and then take the bottom layer and put it on top. And that would work very well. Anyway, hopefully I covered all those parts and it makes sense. But the bottom line is, yes, it takes a lot longer if you overload the tray or load the tray to the maximum. How else are you going to get 8 or 10 pounds in a batch? I don't know what you would put in there that would have a single layer and still have 8 or 10 pounds. So I load them up, I give it the time. Generally everything's done in about 40 hours, plus or minus 10 hours. So 30 to 50 is 90% of the stuff is somewhere between 30 and 50 hours. Works great with that. So thanks for watching and tell me what you think. Do I have something completely wrong? I could. Again, I'm not a puppy torturing scientist. Thanks for watching.